communities, an opportunity um, to dive in deeply into this gaming industry, this experience they all love to do, and help them become creators of this content, not just consumers. And it's we've been finding that it's a program that we've been running called the Games for Change Student Challenge. We've been running it for the past 6 years. We've reached over 30,000 young people in middle and high school. And we not only give them an opportunity to learn how to make games, but we also combine that with civic engagement. So they have to think about how games can help make their communities better. So right from the start, we want to empower them to think about this really important medium, not only as something they love to do, but they actually can make. They're learning important 21st century and STEM skills that can help them regardless of what career path. But what we really hope to see happen is that they see a future for themselves and they see an opportunity, a pathway for them. And part of our program, an important part of it, is this idea of mentoring and mentoring from near peers and also from people from the community. So as Jim says, it's so important they see themselves in the people that are coming to speak to them. So when we're in Los Angeles, for example, we can reach out to USC Games for game design students to come and speak to the kids, that we can bring people in from Riot or Activision or from Take-Two to come in and say, yes, this is what I do, and this is something for you. And we do the same thing in New York and working in Atlanta and Detroit. And I can tell you that students are coming back year on year, and we're seeing them use this program as like their college essay, or they're building their portfolio. And I love the idea that, if we can get to them at a young age. They spend their summers with Layla at Girls Make Games, and then they can go on and apply to college, and we're talking about this pipeline or this pathway for them. And so that's that role and what we hope to inspire.
I love what you said there, Suzanne. There's so many little nuggets that you just pulled out there. The different avenues you can have and career pathways there are in the gaming industry. Just the activity that you can have in terms of having mentorship and role models and representation, and just having good gamers out there. So there's so many things that you talked about that I want to hit on. Let's just pull Layla into this conversation and just talk about the idea of mentorship and representation. Layla, talk about the workshops and the summer programs that you offer to girls. How does that help to increase the representation and the mentorship aspects that we've talked about?
Thanks so much for having me. I was on mute. This is 2021, still going on mute. But like Susanna said, I think it's really important to kind of pass that baton on. And I think we see this summer after summer, having created a place that's, for girls. We get this question a lot. Why do you need a space that's just for girls? There's so many programs out there that are open to everyone. But I think it's just so important to create that space because, like Jim talked about, it's so important to see people who are like yourselves. For many of the girls that come to camp, this is their first time walking into a room full of girls who love video games. They've been so accustomed to kind of being the only girl on their robotics team, or the only girl that went to a coding camp with their brother, and the girl who's fighting her brothers for the Xbox controller. So those are very common themes and stories, and I think it's important to kind of tie in not just the mentorship, but also the community. It's very important to walk into a room and feel like you're not an outsider, and the best way to do that is to show many more faces that look just like you. It's really
E
validating
aí,
to walk
pessoal,
away
boa
not
tarde.
just
Aqui
with
é o
the
evento da
technical skills, but to
Check-in-To,
feel
né?
like these
A
are
gente
people
esperava
that
que
are
tivesse uma
gonna,
coisinha a mais,
bring
que
you to
nesse
camp
painel
for
deles
your
aí
own
poderia
victories,
ser
and we'll be
uns
like
jogos
professionals,
mostrando pra
because right now we're
gente
just kids making games,
ficar
but we'll be
mais
professionals
pra
in a
ficar
few
mais
years.
interessante, né?
And 7 years out for girls
Mas
make
como não
games, we're
apareceu,
finally starting
vamos
to
esperar agora mais
see
pra tarde o evento
these girls
da
kind of make plans together to go to college, and
da
this year
Capcom.
I would say, like, the first time we got in like dozens of emails from families saying, my daughter is now
Eu
thinking of
acho que poderia
college,
ser
and
uma
how do
coisinha
we
mais
get this
interessante,
portfolio
né, cara? Uma
going?
coisinha que fosse
How do
mais
we set that
de...
up? So I think, touching on Jim's point too,
Poxa,
there's so many challenges that people have to go through just to get everything right. You shouldn't have to rely on luck so much. So if you look at the women who are now excelling and thriving in the industry, and you ask them their stories, so many things had to go right in their lives to finally end up in the industry. Many of whom ended up there accidentally, like me and even Tony. I think Tony and I touched on that earlier. But it shouldn't have to be luck or accident. We can actually intentionally create these pipelines. And I think it requires all of us working together, like everyone in this room, talking about what we're doing and how do we pass our students on from, we start as young as 8, getting them onto the programs and then passing them on to the student challenge and then on to USC and then finally on to the industry. I think that's basically the magic formula to solving the problem that we're talking about today.
Yes, thank you for hitting on that pipeline challenge and actually solution. You really clearly laid it out there for us. I really, really enjoy that. And something else you mentioned is just like really opening this world of gaming to new, diverse, a pool and a spectrum of gamers. And how do we create those real pathways back into the gaming industry? Gordon, you've done a lot of work in just helping to create value where value was not seen in places in the gaming industry, specifically for the gay gaming professionals. Can you talk about how the representation and widening the spectrum of what gaming professional looks like and how your company and your role really accomplishes that?
Sure. So we have a mission which is focused on education, employment, expertise, and
Oi, filho, boa
entrepreneurship.
tarde. Eu vim aqui
And
ver esse evento
the
aqui da
reason
Check-in
why is
Tour,
because
mas
alongside
tá
diversity
parecendo
and
um
equity inclusion, there's a new word
aulão
that's come
por,
alive, which is
por
belonging,
internet.
right?
Um monte de povo
Feeling
aí
of
nos quadradinhos
belonging,
falando sobre
of
algumas
being an
coisas
adult.
e nada de
And
mostrar jogo.
I know that people in their uniqueness do a lot of mental, socioeconomic, and sometimes social gymnastics before they get to be as good as they are, before they get a chance to participate in this panel or participate in our industry by and large. And I think the work that we all share is trying to disrupt some of those mental gymnastics, socioeconomic gymnastics, social gymnastics that young women, people of color, indigenous
Cara,
people,
tá um negócio aqui chato. Parece que eles estão só
people
se reuniram aqui no trabalho. Não, vamos fazer nossa reunião de trabalho aqui e mostrar para eles como é que a gente faz. Mano, que chato, mano.
in the space. So
É,
here
aulão de
you
inglês
have
aqui,
Layla
pai.
speaking to
Aulão de
a
inglês.
cohort, right? That treats
Tá,
each other as the fault.
tá uma
Where are
coisa
we gonna
bem,
go now
bem,
together,
sabe,
collectively?
bem
The
fraca aqui
programs
esse
that Jim's
negócio.
putting in place, right? With the endowment honoring Lawson, where there's going to be cohorts of Black and indigenous people, right? Growing together. And the work that Susanna, you've been doing since before it was cool. Okay. You were changing games, making that dollar out of 15 cents before all of us. All of that work.
Já tá muito chato.
And with the support of
Um aulão aqui de inglês. Os
right?
professores aí que
Is
falam as
enabling
coisas
us
aí.
to move a generation forward. Specifically with
Gente do céu,
GGP,
cadê
we
os
have a scholars
jogos?
program in partnership with Take-Two. Some go to USC, many go on to participate in Games for Change, and many have been girls who made games. And that's where we find ourselves intersecting, is at that college point of how do we take towards professionalization, and then we hope to
Dá
carry
sono aí,
through
professor, dá
into
sono.
employment, into being experts, right? Because that's the real challenge. We're trying to discover people. You don't want just to be entering. You want experts, right? And if things are going to really change, like this discussion, you need owners, right? Layla, owner. Susanna, owner. Jim, owner. All of you, owners of facets of your business, right? That is where we become the batter, not the frosting, right? Where the change is,
que é
more than we
vocês. Esse
count,
negócio aqui
2%,
tá fraco
3%,
demais.
1%. We aren't
Eu
even the
pensei
ones
que até aqui
counting,
o pessoal aqui falando,
right? We're
comentando
still
sobre o jogo. Ia
being
ter jogo
counted,
aqui pra gente ver algum
right?
jogo
Until
aí.
you're doing the
Muito se fala
counting,
em GTA 6 e tudo
nothing
mais.
has
E cadê os
changed,
games aqui pra
right?
gente
I don't
ver?
need to ask
Tá aí,
how
ó.
many young ladies are
Esse
in
povo vai
girls
falando
make games.
sobre
Like
esse
all
Xing
of
Ling
them,
deles aí.
right?
Porra.
What is the gender balance of Games for Change? I didn't, all of it, right? These sort of systemic changes, like that is
Home
the
Office
work I think we
Simulation.
all share. I think it's why we all made time today, right? I've been to every E3. I was a booth boy when I started, and I'm still here, right? 25, 26 years later, haven't missed one yet. So
Mano do
I
céu, isso
hope that
isso aqui
someone
tá,
out
olha, vou te
there
contar,
sees
viu?
this and begins their path,
Véi,
right?
isso aqui era pra ser
And this
um
is
evento de
massive.
game,
That's
assim, uma
why
coisa
we're
mais
all
interessante,
here.
que eu vim pra cá pra ver isso,
I
não foi pra ver
appreciate
uma reunião de
that.
trabalho,
Yes,
aí fica o pessoal
exactly
aí
what you're
falando
saying.
besteira
There's
aí,
so
ó.
much more that all of us can be doing. The accountability piece is really very important, Gordon. Thank you for bringing that up. I just want to lay this out there to all our panelists. What
Caraca.
can
E aí,
corporations
pessoal?
do to really set
Quem
themselves
esperou
up
que
for
ser
success
game
in the
também
near
igual a eu
future
e veio aqui e
in
quebrou a cara?
growing this new talent? This talent out there that we need to capture to help us build better, more relevant, engaging video games. What can corporations do?
So I was thinking about this in particular
Olha
as
só, mano,
as
que
Gordon
negócio
was
mais
talking
tosco
about the
esse negócio.
scholarships
Tá fora do
that he
comum.
puts forward. So having organizations, companies like Take-Two have to be visible to young people, not just because they're buying, they're downloading the games off of off of Xbox or PlayStation, but because they're there in front from the beginning. And so Take-Two has been part of our challenge since the beginning, offering scholarships to our grand prize winners. And I can tell you that that's a motivator for kids to participate, not just because there's a scholarship at the end, but it's because Take-Two is part of it. Like, it made us cool. Right? And I
Tá
think
horrível
it's
esse
that
negócio aí, velho.
relationship at that young of an age
Esperava ver
that
um jogozinho aí, até tir aqui meu
that
som,
makes a
baixei
connection with people.
aqui
Is
e
like, yeah,
tal,
they want to hear what
corri
I have
pra
to say.
cá.
Right? Like, they're here because this program exists and because I'm interested in doing it. And I think that kind of relationship with these kids, whether they're mentoring and coming into a classroom, they're volunteering at a game jam or judging games at the end of the competition, they're involved. And I think that it really has an impact on young kids' lives.
Yes, I love that.
I just want to add to what Suzanne's saying. I think that, and something that, we're talking about Take-Two, and thank you for having us, is making the success of Black people, of women,
Olha só, meia hora só
of
disso, mano.
queer people, of indigenous people, neurodiverse people, a business goal.
Estou me sentindo um palhaço vendo esse negócio aí. Anunciaram meia hora de transmissão pra mim que ia rolar algum gamezinho aí. O povo ainda testou em GTA 6, mais nada. E já passou o quê? Quase meia hora já de apresentação deles, até agora nada.
Black people, neurodiverse, other populations was a business goal, then that would be the change. It'd be that simple. Like, oh, our business is more successful if there is more of this, right? And that's about people being of value versus just being valuable,
Yes.
which are two different things. There's lots of exceptional people, right, who are of value in spite of their circumstances. They're valuable, right? There's a difference between saying you're of value and that's a business goal in itself. And I think that's the real change, because it used to be,
Gente do céu, pessoal, eu também fiquei frustrado igual vocês aí, viu? Eu esperei que ia aparecer alguns jogos aí, alguma coisa legal aí, mas nada, só eles falam aí, essa larota aí, essa reunião de trabalho que eles fizeram, né? Eu tô aqui, ó, como parte também. Caraca, gente do céu. Totalmente aqui sem...
Right? And so as the lever moves more towards that,
this,
right? The same way, like, I have biases. I attended Harvard College, so I'm of value, right? There's value.
Teve trailerzinho aqui e tal, que eles começaram, mas acabaram nem... Só pra empolgar a gente mesmo e acabou, cortaram.
Was put onto women, onto brown people, black people, queer people, then there'd be no, as the kids say, no cap on the change that could take place.
Right. And that just speaks to being deliberate with our diversity, inclusion, equity practices. Corporations really have to take that accountability and, like you said, do what's right
Eita, galerinha,
in that
pense.
spectrum, in that conversation, looking at value from different sources and kind of recalibrating our minds to that. But like you guys have said, it takes time. It takes starting earlier in the pipeline. I love that you just call that out. What other things can corporations do that are just different than what we've been doing in the past, perhaps? What would you recommend?
I would even add to what Gordon just said. The looking at this challenge as a business challenge is key. That's what between the inspiration of the social justice marches from last summer and really talking to our chair Danny Bilson, who said that, hey, if you were going to tackle this issue, this giant generational issue as a business problem, what you could do
Alex,
that
gaming.
flip the light switch on,
Beleza,
but
patrão,
of
beleza,
course at
pai.
any
Cara, a
business
gente
problem
pensava que
where
até
right
hoje
now
aqui alguma
you've got
coisa sobre game
gaps in
aqui
my
na
supply chain, if
Take-Two,
you will. So
que
how do
eles
I
iam
build those
mostrar
gaps
alguma
in my
novidade aqui pra
supply
gente tava
chain?
esperando,
Really
mas vieram
working
com
your way
essa
back up the
reuniãozinha,
value
essa
ladder,
reunião de
putting
trabalho deles aí, onde cada um
objectives,
fala um pouquinho de uma
strategies, and
coisa, de
tactics in
outra,
place
sobre isso.
to
Mano,
achieve those goals from a business
cara,
perspective. You're going
somente,
to
mano,
see
só vão
outcomes.
enrolar,
It's
pai.
not just,
Pense num
hey, here's
negócio
a
chato,
check and
velho.
good luck with
Eu
sharing
tava
that.
aqui
It's
fazendo
going to
um
be more
trabalhozinho
about,
assim, aí eu disse,
here's
não,
the
vou
check.
abrir lá pra ver
This is
o que
what we're
vai
hoping to
ter,
see.
e
Let's
quando cheguei
measure
aqui,
along
só
the way and
essas
see if we're
lorotas aí.
seeing progress on that. And it's the measurement of progress and
Parece
adjusting
que
your
mais
business
tarde
based on
tem
the
o da
data that you're
Capcom,
getting
né?
back. That's where you're going to meet. That's where you're going to see the gap start to close in a meaningful way and be able to point out
É,
to other
foi
people in
tenso,
the
viu?
industry, like, hey, this is what we can all do together. What if we scale this effort up and really had an
Justamente,
impact
mano,
on society as a
justamente.
whole?
Eles
That
prometeram meia hora
mindset
aqui
is really going to be what changes the
de
game.
videoconferência.
So I like
Já
to
estamos
I
quase
like to think
batendo
about it as like a
já. Quanto
pie.
tempo já de
You know,
vídeo
when we
já?
think about like from like a corporate
Deixa eu
strategy, we always
ver.
think about
Quase
there's a
meia hora
piece
de
of the
vídeo
pie
já
and
e
everyone
tá
gets to eat a
acabando.
piece of
Só,
the
só
pie.
ficou nisso,
But
cara.
I think the way we have to
Eu
approach
queria
it
ver
is
algum jogo
really
novo aí, já
pie
coisas
is
massas
not
já que a gente
fixed
tá
size. I
precisando
think
ver
by
da nova
bringing more people,
geração.
the pie gets bigger. So
Alguma
it's not a
novidade.
fixed
Muito
size
se
that we're
falou
gonna all
também
get a piece
em
of,
GTA 6
but
aí.
by
Eu não sei se
including
isso é
more
verdade.
people, you know, in the industry by becoming creators of this
Pronto,
medium,
mano.
how would you
Capcom a gente vai estar
expand the
aqui colado
medium?
aqui na
So
hora. Eu acho que eu
expand it
não vou nem
beyond
logar.
just
Vou continuar aqui
entertainment.
assim,
I
ó.
think that speaks
Com
really
a gente
heavily
aqui.
to me as a problem solver. Is like when I look at video games, it's such an underutilized tool for social change, and I think like that I can see Susanna kind of has been
Massa,
on the
também quero
forefront
ver,
of
velho.
that. And coming in as an outsider to the games industry, I was just kind of blown away that, oh my God,
Tá
you can
passando
do
aqui
so much. Like
aqueles
9 out
aulão,
of 10
sabe,
kids play
de
video games.
escola. A minha
You know,
filha faz
not
muito
9 out of
isso.
10 boys, 9 out of 10 kids. We're talking about literally changing perceptions and inspiring and educating
10 sono, mano. 10
generation
sono
after
isso aí.
generation. And yet that power rests in the hand of like a select few. And I think when you think about it, not just from a corporate responsibility, but as a social responsibility, like what are we putting out there for our kids to consume? I think we need to bring in pretty much everyone, anyone and everyone who's
Mas
interested in
o
building the
pessoal,
future
acho
together.
que eles
So
querem
between
enrolar
the
por
pie and the corporate
causa
responsibility, I
que
feel
não
like
tem
there's a lot
tempo,
that
que
gets
não tem
lost.
jogo.
Like I think there's a big dichotomy between these are people that are doing
É,
good and these are
porque
people that
justamente,
are
concordo com você,
self-serving,
que
but
a
it
gente
doesn't
vem
look
para
like that.
para
We have to work
E3,
together
né?
and everyone
Um
needs to
evento
kind
de
of go
gamer,
between
onde
what's good for me and what's good
você
for
é
everyone,
game, mano.
you
Você
know?
não
So
vai só estar
Thank you for
falando,
bringing that
conversinha aqui
concept up,
de
Layla.
plataforma, de
Codependency, we
gráfico,
are
de
all
futuro.
community
Mano, a gente quer
members
ver
in
aqui
this kind of
é a
fight, and we
parada
have
aqui, a
to
gente quer
be
ver o game,
active,
mano.
deliberate in
Um
our
trailer, uma
processes, in our
gameplay.
systems, how we tackle this problem.
Me dê vida, me dê life,
Before
mano.
we end this conversation, there's tons of questions that we have that we want to ask you. So I'm going to pause right now and give our esteemed
A
questionnaires
Take-Two,
a
deixa eu ver, a
chance to
Take-Two,
ask
ela
their questions that are top of mind related to
tá
our
trabalhando
conversation
atualmente em
today.
quais jogos, hein? Olha,
So we're going to start it off
nada.
with some questions from our other video game industry experts here. We've got Carrie, she's an executive producer from Private Division. We also have Vanetta, who's a director of talent acquisition with Take-Two, and Nir, he's the head of mobile for Take-Two. So go ahead and fire it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. The first question is for Layla, but certainly open to having the rest of our panelists answer the question. But at the beginning of your career,
Agora, mano, mais tarde a Capcom deve ser bem interessante. A Capcom sempre tem uma coisa boa pra gente, viu?
That is predominantly male dominated. And what is your advice for other young women that are interested in
Vamos chamar aqui de Fake Two, né? Pra vir aqui pra E3 e não trazer não gamezinho, só essa conversa aí sobre estúdio, sobre não sei o que, sobre galera. Tá fraco mesmo, hein, pessoal? Caraca, mano. Troquei de óculos aqui, eu botei meu óculos especial de leitura aqui, ó, tudo mais. E nada.
Or my brothers or my cousins or any of that. I was fortunate that my
Fake
parents
Two.
were very supportive and
Gostei
they wanted
disso.
me to pursue whatever dream I wanted. But I think
Jesus,
having that
pense.
mindset and coming from a world that was very much male dominated already prepared me for, hey, whatever I end up doing, there's going to be more boys or men than me. I think the piece of advice that I would really give girls is to honestly not think about your gender when you think about what you want to pursue, because it's all about you specifically. You might end up liking things that people,
É.
even your age, your geographic location, your educational background,
Deixa eu
or
ver aqui quais são os
your
eventos aqui de mais
family
tarde.
might not have heard of or even thought of. And that is all the things that I ended up doing were things that didn't match anything that I had seen in my own environment,
Olha.
but I just kind of pursued what I wanted to. And then
Mano,
two
a
is to
Capcom
kind of,
já confirmou 4
this is a
jogos
very
já, mas mesmo
selective
assim já falou que vai ter surpresa, hein?
hearing. I think you have to kind of develop selective hearing. Listen to the people that care
Show.
about you, that love you, and encourage you in being more of who you are, and diminish the voices of people who say you can't do things because it's never been done, or that's not how it is, or that's not how the world works. The way the
Mano,
world
então
works
6h30 é o evento
from
da
building,
Capcom, né,
and
cara? Então,
continually building a new
volta das
place
6 horas já vai estar aqui já,
now.
coladinho aqui já,
It's going to be
mano.
done a different way as you grow up, and you can be part of building that world. So
Vai ter
those
jogos
would be
bons
like
aí.
my two pieces of advice for
Vai ter
girls, is to
Motorruns,
just
Story
pursue what you want
Rise.
and develop selective hearing.
All right. My question is for Susanna, but also open to anyone else who would like
Eu
to
acho que talvez
answer.
tenha alguma
And I
DLC
think,
de
Gordon kind of
também
hit it,
Resident
earlier
Evil
when
Village
he
também.
said,
Mano, às
that,
6h30,
most of us didn't
coloque no
have-
pai que
didn't
vamos
have a lot of
transmitir isso aqui ao
examples
vivo pra
or
vocês também.
opportunities. I'm in that boat. I didn't have any programs and anyone telling me that I could do this. And
Deixa eu ver aqui quais são
definitely had
os
to,
próximos eventos depois disso aqui.
not necessarily an accident, but really had to
muito
work
aqui.
In a different way, harder than most. So,
Às 4 tem
my
In the
question,
Short
Susanna, for you is,
Case.
could you share an example of how your program has
Às
impacted
4h30
someone that
tem
has
Freedom
participated,
Games.
or, a few people?
Sure.
E às
So,
6h30
as I
tem
said,
a
our program is
Capcom.
6 years old in
De
New
hoje,
York
né?
City. We're a bit younger in the other cities that we're operating in, and there are opportunities now that kids all over the country can participate.
Mano, eu acho que a Capcom vai ter surpresas aí muito boas, velho. Muito top mesmo. A gente vai surpreender. Eu acho que tô com esses coração aí positivamente bom. Não só DLC, mas de algum game aí na cartola.
That have encouraged their kids to participate, their participants year on year on year. And that to me is certainly the beginning of getting this kind of program.
Cara, eu tava vendo aqui, ó, a Capcom, essa é a primeira transferência deles na E3, viu?
Find value and really and work to
vai ser meia hora da Capcom só para ela mesma. Então,
students to continue with the program year on year. There's one young woman in particular who won, I think she won the like our theme category the first time round when she participated as a sophomore. The junior year, she won again. And by the senior year, she was a grand prize winner in New York City. And I hear that she then followed on with a full scholarship.
Trazer a continuação de Dave McCry.
And it was just amazing. And I just remember she was invited to speak.
E aí, imagina, Dave McCry nessa nova geração ia ser muito foda, mano. Muito foda. Resident deve ter alguma coisa de Resident. Algum DLC deve ter de Resident, com certeza. Eu acho que ele não ia deixar esse Resident, não. Mano, já pensou também Dino Crisis? Dino Crisis aí seria, mano, uma coisa muito show de bola, viu? Depois de muito tempo. Agora, um Dino Crisis mesmo, Dino Crisis daquele raiz mesmo.
And actually, since she graduated, I've seen other kids in her family come through the program, but it takes that kind of multiple supports from different directions to really support this young woman.
Porque eles comentaram o seguinte, Alex, que eles estão pensando em trazer franquias de volta, entendeu? Então, quer dizer, meio que a caixa de Pandora foi aberta, mano. Pode vir qualquer jogo aí das antigas muito top, mano. Um Mega Man, mano. Oxe, você tá louco, velho. Seria top, mano. Então, mano, tudo aí é possível, mano. remake.
Yeah, hi, I do. So my question is to Gordon. I'm looking at LGBTQ
Com
representation
certeza,
in
mano. Um
gaming.
remake
I've been in
seria
gaming
agora
for well, more than
do antigão
12
aí,
years,
pai.
and it
Você é louco.
feels to me that representation is a bit low than what you would expect, what I see in tech in other sectors. Do you have some data or some thoughts about that? Is that the fair estimation? And if so, why is that? And what are the main challenges that LGBTQ
Agora,
individuals
o que a gente sabe é o
face
seguinte, mano,
in
que a
this
Capcom,
industry?
quando ela faz remake,
Sure.
ela capricha,
I'll
velho.
tell you a
Ela
little
capricha
history here. So,
bastante.
when we
Entendeu?
started
Não é à toa que você viu
GTV
aí
about 15 years
Resident
ago,
Evil
which is
3,
not
mano.
that
Ficou
long
muito
ago in
top.
corporate times, queer people only existed on an anonymous mailing list, anonymous to each other.
That's
Okay.
Mano,
Because
será, mano? Remake do
employment
Resident Evil
safety,
4.
which is still a concern globally, not to mention just safety, was a number
Eu
one
não.
concern which all of us
É,
lived
realmente
with.
pode
So,
ser que não.
even back then, weird flex, but I had designed Madden
Eu não
football.
achei tão
Got to be
novo, não,
sold a
esse,
company to
o remake
Activision.
do 4, não. Eles
Employment
podiam
safety.
trazer o remake do
So,
4, talvez, se fosse trazer
that is the
com
number
uma
one
pegada
reason
nova geração.
why. And just in this new recent history, have we begun to
Mas
build
eu
the
queria algum
trust
jogo que,
and value
tipo assim,
in each
balançou
other
mesmo, mano.
so as to aggregate and to even acknowledge each other, okay? And to build systemic ties to companies like Take-Two and others to move from hiding from the industry, right? Escaping from the industry to affinity, right? Right? To employee resource groups and corporate leaders like Tony
Ah, cara, eu
existing,
gostei dessa tua
right?
pulseirinha aí,
And
viu,
we're moving
mano? Show de
closer
bola.
to being a business resource. And so in other technology areas, that path is further along, where it is like to say in the batter that
Resident Evil Auto Break.
identity is of value.
Cara, é como eu te falei, velho. A Capcom vai ter aí meia hora aí pra apresentar muita coisa aí. Meia hora, velho, é bastante tempo, velho. Dá pra mostrar bastante gameplay aí. Gameplay não, bastante jogo aí. Gameplay e tudo mais. Então, como já foi falado já, mano. Ela vai ter surpresa pra gente.
Which presumes that LGBT people would be employed, okay, and then in communication with each other, right? In communication with each other across different companies, and in any sort of ongoing concern. So,
cara, eu acho que o que a gente deve fazer, Alex, é pra Sony, mano, entrar ser muito expectativa, cara, que senão a gente quebra a cara. Né? Pé no chão, que vier, seja o que Deus quiser.
Right? Because I think that's something we've all discovered. And I think whatever population you are part of, whether it be across gender,
não, até louco, mano. Vai mostrar. Não, eu acredito. A gente não deve criar tanta expectativa, mas que vai mostrar alguma coisa, vai, mano. Essa é louco. Se ela não mostrar, a partir de amanhã, eu nem abro mais live pra mostrar esses eventos, não. Quando saiu o trailer de Forza e também gameplay de Forza Horizon, mano, que, cara, eu gostei demais, mano. Eu gosto muito dessa franquia, vai.
Asking these questions, corporate support, time, right? 3 T's, time, talent, and treasure, will move this discussion forward. I hope that answers your question there, but otherwise, just get at me. I can, tell you more.
Olha, o povo falou aqui, mano, que há grande chance de realmente a Capcom trazer algo novo aí, algo antigo pra agora, mano. Ressuscitar algum remake aí foda pra gente. Então vamos, né, abaixar um pouco as expectativas, torcer pra que tudo dê certo mais tarde.
So we stream front page of Twitch and we bring it to YouTube, content around equity, inclusion, belonging. And not just LGBT, we just had our second Indigenous Game Creators panel yesterday. Big hit because you know what? Indigenous creation has always been here. Always been here. In August, we're going to be doing our first GGP honors, which is going to be honoring the best in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in our craft. So
Vai, parece que sim, estamos aí.
the work, right? Every day in our
A partir das 6 horas, mas ele vai estar aqui já, aqui logado aqui, ó, comendo aquele pãozinho com café e já aqui na expectativa. Entendeu? Chuta aí qual vai ser, talvez, os remakes possível. Dino Crisis, Mega Man, vamos ver.
So we're going to begin to do that work August. Tune in, front page of Twitch. It's going to be a mood. Hope you're all there.
Awesome. Thank you. We probably have time for one more question, so let's go for it. Who's got their last burning question for our panelists?
Oh, I have several questions.
Burn.
If
Burn.
it's one, we'll just speak. I have to come from the affinity.
Eu acho assim o seguinte, se eles vinham com essa proposta de não mostrar nenhuma gameplay, só falar sobre plataforma, hardware e produção de alguma coisa, que avisasse, mano, né? Deixasse pelo menos alguma coisa pra gente estar atento. Olha, cara, se tiver algo aí, mano, de bom que eu tô esperando aqui, que eu não quero nem dizer qual é, mas na hora a gente vê lá. Cara, vou dar altos pulos aqui, mano.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, to add to that, I think something that a few of us have touched on earlier is an old adage from the business world: you can't manage what you can't measure. If you don't have a way to see how your progress.
Cara, ó, tá acabando já aqui a live da Take-Two, mano. Foi fraco. Falaram assim sobre temas importantes, beleza aí. Mas a gente queria ver alguma coisa, a gente quer ver, mas a gente quer consumir alguma coisa, nem que seja uma gotinha de alguma coisa. Pelo menos um trailerzinho de alguma coisa pra gente ficar com a água na boca, mais nada, mano.
Recognize the fact that the partner and partners that we're working with are making moves and making investments into the future that they're saying that they want to see. The positive feedback loop of being able to say, here's data that shows that what we're doing is having an impact on our objectives, and rewarding that partner or those partners for that investment and for that support. That's really key to building a positive feedback loop around investing in diversity.
Foi, cara, muito fraquinho, frufru mesmo.
Yeah, what Jim said, but I'd still say make it mobile. God, if you could move that needle like 0.2%, anything.
Ó, eles trouxeram um tema sobre a série dentro da indústria, esses negócios e tal. Vieram falar sobre isso, mano. Eu acho que eles deviam. Massa, é uma coisa massa de se falar, uma coisa interessante. Mas, pô, cara, é disso pra gente falar, porque aqui é um evento de game, cara. A gente quer ver jogos.
Comparatively speaking, it's not a huge amount of money. It's, to have a really big demonstrable impact, measurable impact. If we aggregate our dollars and really focus on some key objectives, we can really move the
muito fraquinho.
Frankly, when you start seeing things work, people get excited. It worked. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep doing it. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why the Lawson Fund is what it is. It's an endowment because we want to see and have an impact in the aggregate over time, over generations, and support students for decades to come.
A gente queria ver jogo, cara. A gente queria ver informação, queria ver um trailerzinho, alguma coisa.
Awesome, thank you.
One more thing, just to let it go, is just keep saying black out loud, right? Let's get back to black is beautiful. We've been residing in Black Lives Matter for a long time, and we need to be back to like black and proud and black and beautiful. And so your existence, right? And saying it and saying positive outcomes after the word black is meaningful each and every day that you can do it in your ERG.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you.
Good question. We've got time for more. What else do we have?
Pô, cara, então bora encerrar por aqui, né, mano?
All right, I'll go if we have time for more. Layla,
Ó, Alex, às 6 horas, mano, bora entrar aqui de volta, beleza? Já com a pré-conferência da Capcom, né? Quando for 6h30, a Capcom vai anunciar a sua conferência, mano, e espero que seja bastante top, mano. Então, de 6 horas, vamos entrar aqui. Vai ser muito massa. Amanhã, olha, 1h da tarde vai ter Nintendo também. Quer dizer, mano, velho, amanhã o dia promete também, vai ser muito massa. Então, filho, valeu aí. Valeu, Alex, por ter ficado comigo aqui, mano. Essas meia horinha. Obrigadão mesmo, cara. Um salve pra tu aí. Um abraço no coração. Né? A gente aqui tá aprendendo as coisas devagarzinho, né? Sou youtuber novato. Viu? Obrigadão aí por estar aqui, amigão. Valeu, fica com Deus. E até mais tarde, às 6 horas da noite. Melhor, às 18 horas, a gente se encontra. Valeu, pessoal. Valeu, Alex. Pessoal do Facebook também, um salve para vocês aí. Obrigadão por participar também. Divaldo, tudo mais. Então, pessoal, até mais tarde. É nóis.